Hello everyone, Delus Johnson here. I want to go over some of the 2023 automotive industry trends that I think you should know about. There is going to be a boom in used car sales going on. Car industry experts anticipate a 9% growth rate in used car sales between 2022 and 2025. So in the next 3 years, we are going to see a 10% growth rate in used motor vehicle sales. So the demand for used automobile dealers inventory is rising, particularly for vehicles that are 4 years old or newer. And these vehicles have many of the latest automotive technologies, but are not nearly as expensive as new ones. And now if you want a brand new vehicle, you basically have to order it. We've seen a dramatic change in the industry. So this is definitely increasing used motor vehicle sales. And I'm always a big believer that, this is a great time to get your used motor vehicle dealer license. Now, the new demand is going to include pre-owned electric and hybrid automobiles as well. And dealerships now have inventories full of, pre-owned autos that look and feel and function like new, but are obviously going to cost much less, than brand new vehicles. Low interest rates are also helping pre-owned vehicles very attractive right now. But I want you to be aware, if you're thinking about getting your dealer's license, or maybe you're currently a dealer, there are some trends you certainly need to be aware of, because dealers need to offer more digital purchasing options. In today's tech-heavy world, consumers of every industry expect online shopping options. So while I believe the auto industry has yet to experience significant demand and transition to online sales, customers do much of their initial research via their PC, their tablet, or their phone, and then a lot of times they'll complete that final purchase in a showroom. However, industry's experts do predict that most, if not all, of purchasing power is going to go online here in the next couple of years. And I want you to be really aware, almost every state in our country requires a sale to take place at your license location only. And so most states are going to require that you sell a vehicle before you actually ship or deliver the vehicle to the customer. In the last couple of years, I'm sure you've heard ads that maybe a local dealership has said, hey, we'll come and show you the vehicle at your home. Well, if you realize, you didn't hear those ads for very long, because most of those ads were illegal. I mean, you could have a loophole in your state that does allow that, but most states are very clear. The sale has to take place at the license location. So I want you to be aware, whether you have a license or maybe you're thinking about getting a dealer's license, the retail sales has to take place normally at your license location. So how do you handle this when you're handling internet transactions? It's very easy to do, actually. So let me kind of cover a scenario with you here. Let's just say, for example, let's say you got a car for sale on Craigslist, and you got a customer in another state that's doing some search and finds that, and they want to buy it from you. That's great. That's no problem. But what you're normally going to have to do in most scenarios is you're going to have to deliver that paperwork, mail that paperwork to that customer, and they're going to mail you back the paperwork, like bills of sales and things like that, plus the payment. Once you've received that at your license location, your state's probably going to consider that is an online sale, so an on-site sale that took place at the license location. So you certainly want to make sure that you're complying with your state law. I can tell you right now, I bet anything, your state does not allow you to meet that customer at some truck stop a couple states away and do the paperwork there and have off-site retail sales activity. So you definitely need to check your state law, but almost all states do require that the retail sales activity take place at the license location. We're seeing a couple of law changes here recently because of the pandemic, obviously, but I just want you to make sure that you're aware that online growth is expected. So you definitely want to keep the transition going on here. And a comprehensive online purchasing experience is going to allow your customers to research your inventory. Some startups are allowing virtual walkthroughs of that vehicle as well, to where you can do basically a 360 interior video. So that's something you want to make sure of. You also want to probably offer your customers the option to secure their financing before they walk into the dealership. So I was researching a little while back a company called Prodigy, where you can literally type in their code into your website, and your customer can go ahead and do their own loan application and be approved for a loan before they even walk onto the lot. So that's something that you want to be aware of. And they want to make that purchase as well. So just always keep that in mind when you're setting up your website to allow online purchases. Make sure that basically the purchase takes place before you actually deliver that vehicle. That's how, great companies like Carvana and Zoom are operating. In my dealer training classes across the country, I've often been asked, well, how do these companies like Carvana and Zoom presumed do it? Well, they're complying with their state laws, and they have to sell the vehicle before it's delivered. And those companies normally offer like a 3-day buyback guarantee or something like that. But I just want you to be aware, most states do not allow you to show that vehicle at a customer's home away from the licensed dealership unless they purchased it in advance. It's really interesting that, by 2025, 25% of cars that are sold in the United States are going to have electric engines, and they're going to be electric vehicles. That's up from 5% today. So just in 3 years, we're going to see a 20% growth on that. And, most of those are going to be hybrids, but 95% of the cars in the United States still rely on fossil fuels. But I do believe that we need to definitely prepare for this industry transition. There are states like California here in just a few years, new motor vehicle dealers are not even going to be able to sell combustion engines in their vehicles anymore. They've got to be electric. So, this means dealers need to be prepared for these new boom in sales of electric vehicles. The used market has surged in recent years, particularly for vehicles that are aged 4 years or less. And as the chip shortage and supply chain dislocations have continued to plague new motor vehicle manufacturers, it's really allowed used motor vehicle dealers to flourish, and right now what I've seen here very recently, in fact, vehicles are coming back through the dealer auctions where they weren't a year or so ago. There was such an incredible demand a year or so ago for vehicles. It was really difficult to get them in dealer auctions. Well, now what we're seeing is the rental return companies, they're bringing vehicles back through, because a couple of years ago, companies like Enterprise and Thrifty, they couldn't replenish their inventories. So they couldn't, normally a rental car company will replenish their inventory about every 2 years. Well, a couple of years ago, they were not able to do that. So they hung on to those rental returns, and for a good almost 2 years, we were not seeing those rental returns coming through the lanes. Well, now these companies are able to replenish their rental inventories, and now the 2 and 3 and 4 year old rentals that they have are coming back through the dealer auction. So that's opened up a new revenue stream for used dealers, is being able to once again buy the rental returns. Something I saw a couple years ago, the lease returns stopped. They just stopped coming through dealer auction lanes because, think there 1 out of 4 vehicles, brand new vehicles, are actually leased. I wasn't really aware that number was so high, but 1 out of 4 vehicles are leased. So obviously when someone has a lease in, they have to return that. And what we found out here, we had a lot of persons that normally lease vehicles that were not able to release a new vehicle, so they extended their lease. So us used dealers, we did not see those vehicles, those lease returns coming through the dealer auction lanes, and now they're coming back. So, as hard as it is to buy a brand new vehicle, us used dealers, we are flourishing, obviously, right now. There's a huge pent-up buying demand. And even with some more government-backed loans that we have now, where we didn't have a couple of years ago, you might have a person with the most horrendous credit score on the planet, and we're able to get them loans now because of some of that government-backed financing. You're also able to get inventory at the used dealer auction lanes, where we were certainly having some troubles doing that in the past. One thing, cleaning techniques, refurbishing techniques have advanced significantly, resulting in pre-owned vehicles that look like brand new vehicles. And, I'm a big believer, no matter who you've got cleaning, maybe you're cleaning all your vehicles on your own. Maybe you got an employee that are making those vehicles look like brand new. Whether you call them a lot detailer or a lot porter, whatever the title is for that person, treat that person like gold that works for your dealership, because there's a real art to that, and there's a real art to cleaning vehicles. And I'm sure you've probably cleaned a few on your own, but as you do grow, you might hire someone to do that for you. The first job I ever had, I cleaned vehicles at a funeral home. It's one of the first jobs that I ever had, and there's a real art to it. And to this day, I still enjoy getting one of my own vehicles and cleaning it up and detailing it. I can spend a couple hours detailing a vehicle and making it look good. So, definitely want to make sure that it looks new to me. That's what the customer needs to think when they come in. So, definitely keep that in mind. If you got a lot porter, a lot detailer, treat them like gold. The way there is an art to that, and they can certainly help you sell your vehicles. That's something else you want to be aware of. Another compelling factor that we're looking at in 2023 has been the low financing. Now, some of those rates are starting to going up because the feds have been trying to fight inflation. So we are seeing some rates rise for mortgages, but right now the used motor vehicle dealer loans are pretty much level right now, and they're lower than they were about 2 years ago. But as the Fed raises rates to fight inflation, I do believe those rates are going to increase here in the very near future. You definitely want to see if you can include electric vehicles and hybrids in your inventory. I think a lot of dealers are not quite ready for that surge in used EVs. I'm a particular person that realizes that, you can't make money until you buy a vehicle in the first place. And I've always been an aggressive advertiser on buying vehicles. I was buying vehicles from individuals before buying vehicles from individuals was cool, and there were many times I would sit at Craigslist and literally click the refresh button every single day and show up at that person trying to sell that vehicle. I was the first person at the door with cash, because when you're buying vehicles, obviously cash is a dealer's best friend. So I've been buying vehicles for years and years directly from individuals, and now you hear all of your local dealers advertising, we'll buy your vehicle even if you don't buy from us. There's always a couple of other precautionary measures that you want to take when you are buying vehicles directly from individuals. You'll need to be aware of the explosion of VIN fraud. VIN fraud, like identity theft, has really exploded here in the last few years, and a very successful identity theft scheme involves an identity thief that will steal an ID and then take that person's ID and take it to the nearest car dealership, buy a vehicle, usually finance about 100% of it, and then somehow they're able to ship or sell this vehicle to a person who lives in another country, and basically the overseas buyer wire transfers the entire purchase price into some anonymous checking account somewhere. So you definitely want to be aware of that. You want to make sure you never accidentally buy a stolen vehicle. We had dealers all over the country that got hit really hard with this huge ATV theft ring that came out of California here a few years ago. And somebody stole a whole bunch of box ATVs off of these California power sport dealerships. They unboxed them and they sold them to licensed dealers throughout the country. So the California Highway Patrol, they hooked up with a lot of local and state law enforcement agencies, and they were absolutely able to find out where these vehicles were. And so you're probably aware of this, but licensed dealers bought many of those. You're probably aware of this. When law enforcement finds a stolen vehicle, they do not care who's purchased it in the meantime. It's confiscated, and it's going to go back to either the rightful owner or the insurance company that made the payout. So we had state highway patrols and state police all over the country that went in and confiscated these four-wheelers that had been purchased by licensed motor vehicle dealers throughout the country. And I can almost guarantee you that none of those dealers that purchased those stolen four-wheelers and then got them confiscated by their local law enforcement office probably never got any type of financial recourse, from the person that stole them. So you want to make sure you never buy a stolen vehicle. You want to make sure you never buy a vehicle with an undisclosed lien, because, it's so easy to get a loan for a vehicle, like a title loan. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I do predict there's going to be times when you have your dealer's license and, maybe you're taking a trade-in and you ask that customer if they owe anything on that trade, and they will look you straight in the eye and they'll tell you no. And they do owe money on it many times. You'll find out there's an undisclosed lien on that. You want to make sure you never buy a vehicle with an undisclosed lien. So you also want to make sure I recommend never buying a vehicle that's been sitting underneath water, unless maybe you're going to export it to another country where they have a lot less regulations. There's been so many water incidents here in the last few years between, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Harvey hit the Gulf Coast of Texas here just a few years ago, and 1.2 million vehicles in the city of Houston sat underneath water for a couple of days. And if you can ever imagine, throwing a computer into a bathtub and thinking it's going to work a couple of days later, there's really no difference between that and a flooded motor vehicle. So definitely be aware of those. I'm a big believer in running your VINs through the National Motor Vehicle Title Information System. That's vehiclehistory.gov. And if you ever take one of my dealer training courses, I will show you that extensively. Vehiclehistory.gov. So you definitely want to make sure that you do your VIN research. I'm going to recommend that you run VINs through the National Motor Vehicle Title Information System every single time that you're buying a vehicle, or maybe you're taking a trade-in. You are going to have some protections when you get your dealer license and you're buying vehicles at the dealer auction, but you don't have any protections when you're buying directly from individuals. So, I hate for you to ever go to the scenario where maybe you buy a vehicle from Joe Bob on your lot last week. This seemed like the nicest guy in the world until you found out that car that you bought was stolen a couple weeks before that. So vehiclehistory.gov, you can certainly run those VINs. So I think we also need to be really preparing for the explosion of self-driving vehicles. They're here, and they're going to be more prevalent in 2023. Research has actually shown that self-driving vehicles can be safer. They reduce downtime, and they also reduce driver fatigue and driver negligence, and they improve fuel efficiency by 10%. So we are going to be seeing an explosion of these. Several trucking companies have already installed self-driving technology, and they've tested it at locations nationwide. You can drive through Arizona right now and see semi-trucks that are being driven in remote parts of the interstate that don't even have drivers. So we're, like it or not, we are definitely heading this way. But beginning in 2023, and it is really going to become commonplace to see a fleet of self-driving commercial trucks, or maybe you're going to be driving down the highway and see a self-driving Tesla right next to you. So you definitely want to be aware of that. We've had a lot of changes here in the industry. So, it's an interesting fact that automobile dealerships in the United States, they make up 20% of the United States retail sales. So we are a huge, huge sector of the gross domestic product, and we're also one of the largest sales tax generators probably for your state. I'm imagining that motor vehicle dealers are probably the largest sales tax generator for your state. So think about that. When you sell a $10,000 vehicle and you collect sales tax on that and transfer it to your state, that's a lot more than a customer just going in and buying $100 or $200 at Walmart. So we are very large sales tax generators, and we do make up 20% of the retail sales in the United States. The United States employs over 4.1 million people in dealerships. So that's always something to be aware of, and that's 2.5% of the gross domestic product. Electric vehicles are also releasing a lot more emissions than gas-powered vehicles. I think that's something that we need to be aware of. And on a final fact, I've just wanted to do a kind of a quick video here to show you kind of some of the trends that we are expecting. Right now, there are 1.2 million electric vehicles in the United States, and in 7 years there will be nearly 19 million electric vehicles. So right now there's 1.2 million. By 2030 there's going to be nearly 19 million. So I believe as a used motor vehicle dealer that you and I both, we need to prepare for this, the explosion of electric vehicles. I think that now's the time to be scooping them up. If you have to run a local ad that says that you're buying electric vehicles, it's definitely going to be the trend. And I predict when you have electric vehicles on the lot, they are definitely going to be sold quickly. And another advantage about really delving into electric vehicles, you want to make sure, or you probably want to be aware of, tends to be a lot less problems with an electric vehicle coming back than combustion engine. Because if you've got an older vehicle with a combustion engine, obviously there's a lot of things that can go wrong. But when you have electric vehicles, there's not a lot that can go wrong. You got basically a battery driving a turbine that's driving a drive shaft, so there's a lot less parts involved. And I think if you do start expanding into electric vehicles, then you're probably going to see a lot less of those vehicles coming back. So anyway, I hope this is helpful for you. If you're looking for dealer training programs, you can go to our website, dealertraining.org. Once again, that is dealertraining.org. We've got a lot of great programs for you, and we are also approved. I am personally a lead instructor in many states, so if we are approved by your state, there's a chance that I can meet you in person when you decide to take your mandated dealer training course. So you can find all that information at dealertraining.org, and I want to wish you the very best of luck with your business. Thank you very much. Have a good one.